Some of us have grown in an environment where expressing sadness is showing signs of anger or fear is really punished. We have all experienced cases or witnessed situations where, for instance, a crying child is told by someone more powerful to shut up, or I'll give you an opportunity to cry for. So most children are trained to stuff their feelings down. And this kind of denial leads to suppression, repression, and maybe it may result to psychological ailment, depression. So if I came across a very interesting passage I'd like to read. It's saying, the individual who eats out of loneliness will surely become frustrated because nothing she can eat will fulfill her need for a relationship. If she continues this behavior, it will lead to frustration and eventually depression, for sure, eating disorders. However, if she steps back and sees the connection between her eating and loneliness, she can start taking actions that will eventually fulfill the need and solve the problem. This takes courage. It requires facing the reality of our lives, what we're missing out, how we're failing ourselves, and whether we're taking responsibility for satisfying our own needs. It requires the willingness to experience our feeling while we look for a response that will truly satisfy us. So, what I find interesting in this passage is we have to take responsibility for satisfying our need, and also we have to truly experience our feeling. We cannot bury our feeling under the assumption that feelings are bad. Whether you like it or not, you have feelings and you have to live through them. You have to be aware of them and then act upon in such a way that you might satisfy your needs.
But does it, sorry.
Yes. Okay.
Hello? My concern about what you've said is you began by saying in the beginning that if you have an illness, you go to see a doctor, prescribes you medication. We just don't bow to the Buddha without taking the medication. So the point which I wish to make about feelings here, yes, we acknowledge our feelings, but in some situation, and you've mentioned about depression, if the feelings, hence depression, is so strong that the individual cannot do the work that's necessary, it may be necessary for them to go on the medication to help them level themselves off so that they can do the work required.
Fully agree. Yes.
You know, and not to discount that, because I've certainly, in my years of practice, seen many people that have been very depressed, and for them to be able to get a grip, they need the medication. And then within a period of time, they can finally go off of it. But I agree about acknowledging feelings. That's my only concern.
Thank you. No, I didn't want to discard, not at all, the physical and chemical aspect of depression. Yes?
Okay, I'm causing trouble this
No,
morning.
that's fine. It's good.
That being said about feelings, does that not become part of yourself and part of your ego by acknowledging them? That's where I had a little bit of in reading and going through the homework, and those were kind of the questions that I came across in my mind, because by acknowledging them, that gives you, thoughts of all different things, and that becomes a part of who you are, part of the self. So that's where,
Greg, yes, please.
Rachel, I think we talked a little bit about this last week as well, right?
Yes.
That they're part of you whether you acknowledge them or not.
Yeah.
Right, and when we talked about the 5 skandhas,
Yeah.
right, the 5 aggregates. So feeling is part of that, right? And whether you acknowledge it or not, acknowledging it would be mindful, being conscious of it,
Right.
right? So, and consciousness is another of the 5 aggregates, right? So the only time at which you can actually do anything about it, like if there are feelings that you want to avoid, or if there are feelings that you don't want to have, then you first have to start off by acknowledging being mindful of them, right, before you can do anything about them. Because they're going to be there regardless, whether you acknowledge them or not. By acknowledging them, that doesn't mean they're not part of you, right? They're anyway.
Did you say that they're not a part of you?
No, they are a part of you.
Yeah, if you acknowledge them, they are a part of the self.
Even if you don't acknowledge them, they're part of you.
They're still there.
You can't
They're
avoid
there,
it,
but
right? You see something, you have a perception, and then you have a feeling about it, and you can't avoid it. Even the Buddha said you can't avoid it. Even if you're enlightened, you can't avoid it, right? Because as soon as you see something, you recognize that you have a feeling about it. Right? And what the Buddha said was that we have to not attach to it. If it's a good feeling, we say, I want more of that. If it's a bad feeling, we say, I want less of that. And it's that making that link, he said, that's the one that we do something about. Okay?
Yes, there is a,
So I'm just gonna go back to the picture for a second.
okay.
So I saw this picture years ago when I was a little kid at the Ontario Science Center, I think. So I don't recall what I saw first, but I do remember it was one picture or the other. And it was very hard, like we, as kids, we all stood there and we were staring, and it's like, there's apparently another picture in here, and you're, you know, and it took you forever to change your perception to see the other image. So what's funny about, you know, the conversation about feelings and then this picture, perceptions. So I chose to say I saw the young woman first, because the feelings, when I look at that picture, I like those feelings better than when I see the other picture, right? So I chose to see the young lady, right? I try not to say she was pretty, but I had judged, and it's like, that's attractive, you know, that's a nice picture. Now, sorry. It's so funny, I teach classes and I feel really nervous kind of speaking into the mic. I probably do better like this, like I'm yelling to one of my classes. Anyways, so sorry about that. But so what was interesting is that everybody else in the classroom, or some of you, I think, when you saw this other picture, I heard the term witch. Now what's funny is that how did this old lady become a witch? I mean, she does not have your stereotypical witch hat on by any means. This is an older lady. She has like a blanket on her head. To me, really reminds me of more of like an Italian mom, or like a babushka, yeah, my best friend would say, right? So I would think of more of a grandparent, and I didn't really know my grandparents and stuff, but I would think, I veer away from that picture because I see somebody older and I see somebody passing soon, and that would be sad for somebody. So, you know, all these stories and attachments about these two images, right? All these things come up. So it's just, I thought that was interesting that some people said witch, and I think in my mind I went there too, but it's like, if you look at it, she's not got a pointy hat on or a broomstick. Like, why did we ever judge her as being a witch? So now all witches have big noses. That's what it was.
I think that really does bring it to a core point, and we talk about attachments. We talk about, you see something pleasant and it plants a seed in your mind, and because of our previous experience, it leads us in a certain direction. And I think this is where we get a little bit trapped with the concept of attachments. It's almost along the lines of, we see a pleasant face, it gives us a pleasant, warm feeling. We see an old face, a scary face, it gives us another type of feeling. We get up in the morning and the sun's shining, I'm going to have a great day.
Yeah.
We get up in the morning, it's raining, I'm going to have a bad day. Why?
Yeah.
Why would that be? If we focus on the present moment, and each moment is an opportunity to be able to view things, and I think that's what Greg and Manuel, their points really are on the attachment to it. Recognize it's a sunny day, but that doesn't mean it's gonna be any type of day, other than what you make it. So when you wake up and it's raining, still be happy. When you see the picture and it's a beautiful woman there, appreciate that. When you see it's an old woman there, appreciate that. Whether it's good, whether it's evil in your mind.
Yeah.
And I think it's the sequence of events, and then Manuel talked about the process that we've all learned in our lives of this happens, this happens, this happens. And that's really the questioning process of examining the suffering. 1 bowl of ice cream is good, 5 bowls, we're worried about weight, we're thinking about, going to the gym, we're thinking about sugar, so everything, that middle path is that balance. But it's that attachment. I have to have a cookie every night before I go to sleep. I need a coffee every morning before I wake up. Do you really? Are you attached to that? And I think it's the recognition of the separation between those two things that's important. It is a sunny day, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all those feelings that you attach to it. And that really is the critical thing along the way. And that is sometimes tough to do because we're breaking lifetime habits that we're all doing. And you see it, somebody walks towards you with a smile on their face, you think one thing. At work, they walk towards you with a frown on their face, you think another thing. But they might have just received a disturbing phone call that there's an issue there. It might have nothing to do with yourself and your situation. So that's the perception.
I was just gonna say, we're also attached to our definition about feelings, right? Sadness is bad, happiness is good. And if we just view it like buttons for mindfulness, like in your car, when the engine light goes on, right? So is it bad that the engine isn't working, or is it good that something told you to be mindful, to do something to fix your engine, right? So they're just lights, like oil, engine, gas. And feelings do that. They cause you to be mindful if you step back and say, okay, so what do I need to do with that detachment, as opposed to getting really entangled and embroiled in it, so.
Just one brief thing. When we say practice, we're gonna practice, it's about, not, as Emmanuel was saying about feelings, it's not just we have these feelings, it's how we apply the teachings to our feelings. So if we've talked about impermanence, right? We've talked about nothing's permanent. So think of this picture, this is the same woman. It's just time apart. And then think of how you reacted to the pretty woman or the witch. And that time, that aging happens to all of us. So we're the ones coloring in the reality. So what do we do with that feeling? Because it happens to all of us. Our experience is empty. So how we use our feelings.
Thank you, Martin, because it's exactly where I was alluding to. It's two perceptions, two different perceptions of the same person, but it's precisely the same person at different stages of her life. So there is no distinction. It's not two different persons. It's the same person, but over time. So, and when we look at this situation in this perspective, then we're able to let go the dual aspect of our mind, the separation between good and bad, the separation between hard and soft, and so on and so forth. That will be our way to escape this tendency always to classify, categorize things. Someone already alluded to an image I was about to use also regarding cars. We all know that cars need minimal things to function properly, oil, gas, fluid, and things like that. So let's say we're driving a car, and all of a sudden there is a light on the dashboard alerting us that something is wrong. So what do we do? What the average driver will do?
Feel anxiety.
That's the first reaction. Okay.
How much is it gonna cost me?
Okay, that's a worried concern, which is correct. And
How much
then,
time is this going to take?
good.
What is it gonna
In my case, it's denial, park the car and don't touch it.
Yeah.
So someone else touches it.
Actually, that's another way of, distracting yourself. Uh-huh.
We just see it get off.
We can also, as Greg said, we can also just sit and wait until it goes off. Will it?
That's
it?
denial.
This is denial. Okay. Most of us, we have different ways of reacting to this light going on. Whether we like it or not, whenever we see the light going on, as Laurie said, we're already worried. We're concerned because this light is a signal that something is wrong. Now, we have two ways of reacting. Either we deny and say it doesn't exist, and then we drive by the next Dairy Queen to get ice cream, or we can drop by the next McDonald's and get a burger, but the light is still there sitting and waiting for us. Or we can say, look, the distraction doesn't really help. We have to understand what's going on. So you may run by the gas station and get the right fluid, top up, and generally it goes off. Or you may say, oh, look, I can take care of it myself. Drive back home, get some olive oil, and top it up.